I never thought a single cup of tea could change the direction of my life, but if I look back now, that's where it all began. At the time, it felt like nothing more than a strange favor I was doing for my aunt, the kind of odd job that you agree to out of politeness and a bit of curiosity. I was 19, restless, and stuck in a long summer break that seemed to stretch endlessly between my first and second year of college. My parents had gone on a long trip overseas for work, leaving me in the quiet care of Aunt Lila, who lived 2 towns away. She was the type of woman who made every space feel like a storybook. Old books stacked in neat piles, the faint smell of lavender hanging in the air, a house full of antiques and soft lamps that glowed like captured starlight. I'd always admired her independence and her careful way of noticing things that most people ignored. The first evening I arrived, she greeted me with that familiar calm smile. "You'll be good company," she said as she poured tea into delicate cups. "But I also have a little project I could use your help with. It's nothing difficult, I promise." Her words were casual, but her eyes sparkled with an excitement that made me curious. She slid a tray of sugar cookies toward me and added, almost as an afterthought, "It might involve a bit of dressing up." I laughed awkwardly, thinking she meant gardening clothes or some kind of costume for a local event. "Dressing up?" I asked, half amused. "Something like that," she said, sipping her tea as if she were testing my reaction. "But let's talk about it tomorrow. Tonight you should rest." That night, lying in the quiet guest room with its soft floral wallpaper, I couldn't stop wondering what she meant. Aunt Lila was known for her eccentric hobbies. She once restored an entire Victorian dollhouse just because she found it in a thrift store. But dressing up? The thought nagged at me until sleep finally came. The next morning, she led me to the back room of the house, a space I'd never seen before. It was larger than I expected, with wide windows letting in beams of sunlight that made everything feel dreamlike. Hanging on a rack along one wall was a collection of uniforms. Crisp blouses, tailored skirts, neatly pressed jackets, and polished shoes. They looked like something out of an old boarding school catalog, elegant yet strangely intimidating. "I'm helping a friend with a historical exhibition," Aunt Lila explained. Her voice breezy but her eyes sharp with focus. "They need someone to model these uniforms for photographs, and I thought of you. You're about the right size, and it pays well if you're willing to help." I blinked at the neatly arranged outfits, the pleats of the skirts catching the light. "You mean, you want me to wear these?" I asked, a nervous laugh escaping before I could stop it. "Only if you're comfortable," she said gently. "Think of it as a costume, just fabric and buttons. No different from acting in a play." I wanted to protest, but something in her calm assurance held me back. Maybe it was the way she spoke, as if she already knew I'd say yes. Or maybe it was the quiet thrill of stepping into something unexpected, a break from the dull sameness of my summer. After a long pause, I finally muttered, "Okay, I guess I can try one." Aunt Lila's smile widened, warm and encouraging. "Wonderful. Let's start simple." She handed me a navy blue skirt and a crisp white blouse, the fabric smooth and cool against my fingers. My heart thudded as I stepped behind the folding screen to change. The skirt swished softly as I slid it up, the unfamiliar weight settling around my waist. The blouse fit snugly, the buttons closing neatly over my chest. When I stepped out, Aunt Lila clasped her hands together, eyes shining. "Oh, it suits you perfectly," she said, circling me like a tailor. "Turn around, yes, just like that." I caught a glimpse of myself in the standing mirror and froze. The reflection staring back was me, but not quite. The sharp lines of my usual clothes were gone, replaced by soft folds and elegant shapes. My hair, slightly tousled, framed my face in a way I'd never noticed before. It was unsettling and strangely captivating, like meeting a version of myself I hadn't known existed. "You look different," I murmured, unable to tear my eyes away. "Different can be beautiful," Aunt Lila said softly, her voice almost hypnotic. "Sometimes we discover sides of ourselves only when we step into something new." I felt my cheeks warm as she adjusted the collar and smoothed the skirt. It was supposed to be just a costume, but as I stood there, A quiet hum of curiosity stirred inside me. It wasn't just the clothes. It was the way they made me feel, as if I were slipping into a story I hadn't yet read. "Let's have some tea before we take the first photographs," she said, breaking the silence. She poured the amber liquid into 2 cups, the steam curling gently upward. "You did wonderfully for your first fitting. A little tea will calm the nerves." I accepted the cup, grateful for something to hold. The tea was warm and fragrant, with a faint sweetness that lingered on my tongue. I didn't know then that this simple ritual, changing clothes, sipping tea, was slowly weaving a thread around me, pulling me toward a future I couldn't yet imagine. As the sunlight shifted across the room, Aunt Lila began setting up the camera, humming softly to herself. I sat quietly, the taste of the tea lingering, my reflection still vivid in the mirror. Something inside me whispered that this was more than just a project, more than a costume. But I didn't yet understand how deep the transformation would go, or how each cup of tea would carry me further along a path I hadn't chosen but was somehow meant to walk. The first photograph clicked, a soft sound like a secret being captured. And with that, the summer that was supposed to be ordinary began to tilt into something extraordinary. One uniform, 1 cup of tea, and 1 quiet revelation at a time. If part 1 felt like a small step into unfamiliar territory, the next few days pushed me deeper than I ever imagined. After that first fitting, Aunt Lila treated the project with quiet precision, as though she'd been planning it long before I arrived. Each morning began the same way. Sunlight filtering through the lace curtains, the scent of freshly brewed tea drifting down the hallway, and Aunt Lila waiting in the back room with another carefully chosen uniform. At first, it was easy to convince myself that this was all harmless fun. The second day's outfit was a gray pleated skirt paired with a soft cream sweater, simple and understated. I hesitated only briefly before stepping behind the folding screen, the sound of fabric brushing against my skin strangely soothing. When I emerged, Aunt Lila gave a satisfied nod. "You carry yourself with such grace," she said, adjusting the hem. "It's as if these clothes were waiting for you." Her words lingered with me longer than I expected. Grace. It wasn't a word I had ever associated with myself. Yet as I moved in front of the camera, following her gentle instructions, I noticed a shift. My posture straightened, my movements softened, and for the first time, I felt an unfamiliar elegance in the way I walked and turned. The click of the camera seemed to punctuate each discovery, capturing fragments of someone I was only beginning to meet. The tea became part of the ritual, always served after the photographs. Aunt Lila brewed it in a delicate porcelain pot, the steam curling like whispered secrets. Each cup tasted subtly different, sometimes sweeter, sometimes with a faint floral note I couldn't quite place. I asked her once what blend it was, and she smiled mysteriously. "Just a calming mix," she said. "Something to help you relax and stay present." I didn't press further. By the third day, the uniforms grew more intricate. A navy jacket with silver buttons, a crisp blouse with a ribbon tie, stockings that shimmered faintly in the morning light. I told myself it was just for the exhibition, just fabric and thread, but I couldn't deny the quiet thrill that coursed through me when I caught my reflection. My face, once something I barely noticed, now held a softness I hadn't seen before. Even my eyes looked brighter, as if they belonged to someone stepping into a long-forgotten dream. That night, I found myself awake long after Aunt Lila had gone to bed. I sat at the small vanity in my room, staring into the mirror. Without the uniforms, I was back in my own clothes, plain jeans and a t-shirt, but something still felt different. My skin seemed smoother, my features more delicate. I blamed the warm summer air, the soft lighting, anything but the possibility that something inside me was quietly shifting. The next morning, Aunt Lila surprised me with a uniform unlike the others. It was a deep burgundy dress with a high collar and intricate lace cuffs. "Today we try something special," she said, her eyes gleaming. "It's from a private collection, and I think you'll find it transformative." The word sent a shiver down my spine. Transformative. I hesitated longer than usual before changing, my hands trembling slightly as I buttoned the dress. When I stepped out, Aunt Lila gasped softly, a sound of genuine wonder. "It's perfect," she whispered. "You've never looked more radiant." I turned to the mirror and almost didn't recognize myself. The rich color of the dress brought out subtle tones in my complexion, while the lace framed my face with an almost ethereal glow. My heart raced as I studied the reflection. Was this really me, or someone I was pretending to be? And why did the thought of staying in this borrowed identity feel so strangely comforting? After the photos, Aunt Lila poured the tea as usual, but this time the aroma was stronger, more fragrant. I took a cautious sip, the warmth spreading through me like a gentle tide. A pleasant calm settled over my body, easing the nervous energy that had built during the shoot. My thoughts slowed, softening into a quiet acceptance of the moment. "You're doing wonderfully," Aunt Lila said, her voice smooth and reassuring. "Every day you seem more at ease in your own skin." Her words sank into me like sunlight into soil. More at ease in my own skin. The phrase echoed in my mind long after the tea was gone, weaving itself into the quiet rhythm of my thoughts. Over the next few days, subtle changes began to appear. Changes I couldn't explain. My skin felt softer. My face seemed to hold a faint glow even in the harsh afternoon light, and there was a delicate sharpness to my jawline that hadn't been there before. I chalked it up to better sleep, to the relaxing effect of the tea, to anything but the unsettling possibility that my body itself was responding to something I couldn't name. One evening, as we reviewed the photographs, Aunt Lila studied me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you feel different?" she asked casually, as if commenting on the weather. I hesitated. "Maybe a little," I admitted. "It's like, I don't know. Like I'm starting to see myself differently." Her smile deepened, calm and knowing. "That's what happens when we stop hiding from possibility," she said. "Clothes, tea, photographs, they're just doors. You're the one choosing to walk through them." I wanted to ask what she meant, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I sipped my tea, the warmth curling through me with an almost magnetic pull. A quiet certainty began to settle inside me, a feeling that this was no longer just an exhibition. Something larger was unfolding, something I couldn't quite grasp but couldn't turn away from either. That night, as I drifted to sleep, I felt a subtle hum beneath my skin, like the faint vibration of a hidden current. I didn't know if it was excitement or fear. All I knew was that each morning I woke with a stronger sense that the person staring back from the mirror was someone I both recognized and barely knew. A version of myself that Aunt Lila, with her gentle guidance and fragrant tea, seemed determined to reveal. And though I told myself I could stop at any time, deep down I knew the truth. I didn't want to stop. Not yet. By the end of the first week, the quiet house no longer felt like a simple summer retreat. It felt like a stage, and each morning's fitting was another act in a story I couldn't step away from. The photographs had gone from awkward poses to fluid movements that seemed to rise from somewhere deep inside me. Aunt Lila never forced anything, yet her calm encouragement had a way of making every new step feel natural, even inevitable. That Saturday morning, I awoke to the sound of soft music drifting through the hallway. A faint floral scent, lavender maybe or something more elusive, lingered in the air. When I entered the back room, Aunt Lila was waiting with an outfit unlike any I had seen so far. Instead of a school uniform or a historical replica, she held a soft pastel dress with a flowing skirt and delicate lace trim. It wasn't a uniform at all. "Today," she said gently, "we move beyond roles and into something freer. No character, no exhibition. Just you." My breath caught. For all the strange comfort I'd found in the uniforms, they had been safe. Customs. This was different. This was asking me to step out from behind the excuse of a project. I'm not sure," I stammered, clutching the fabric. Her eyes were calm, steady. "There's no pressure. But sometimes when we let go of definitions, we find the truest reflection of ourselves. Think of it as exploring, nothing more." The words settled over me like a gentle invitation. I stepped behind the screen, my hands trembling slightly as I slipped out of my usual clothes. The dress was softer than anything I'd ever worn, light as a whisper against my skin. When I fastened the last button and looked in the mirror behind the screen, my heart thudded. The reflection staring back wasn't just a boy in borrowed clothes. It was someone whose presence felt quietly certain, whose softness didn't erase strength but revealed it. When I stepped out, Aunt Lila's eyes softened with a warmth that made my chest tighten. "Beautiful," she said simply, as though the word was fact, not flattery. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The music played softly in the background, the morning light filtering through the windows like a blessing. I turned slowly, watching the fabric sway, feeling the strange but undeniable rightness of it. It wasn't about pretending anymore. It was about existing. After the photographs, Aunt Lila poured the tea. The aroma was richer today, almost honeyed, with a faint herbal undertone I couldn't identify. I took a cautious sip, the warmth spreading through me with a soothing familiarity. "You seem calmer," she observed as she settled across from me. "More settled in yourself." "I don't know if settled is the right word," I admitted, my voice softer than I expected. "It feels like I'm unfolding. Like something inside me is waking up." Her smile was knowing, but she didn't push. "Sometimes awakening feels like that. Low, gentle. Like tea steeping to just the right strength." The metaphor lingered long after the tea was gone. Over the next few days, the subtle changes I'd been trying to ignore became impossible to dismiss. My skin felt softer than it ever had. My hair seemed to fall more smoothly, catching the light in a way that made it look almost silky. Even my voice carried a faint melodic tone that hadn't been there before. It wasn't dramatic, not yet, but it was enough to make me pause every time I caught my reflection. I told myself it was the tea's calming effects, the healthier routine, maybe even the confidence from trying something new. But late at night, when I lay awake listening to the soft creaks of the old house, I couldn't shake the sense that something deeper was happening. Something carefully guided, yet impossible to name. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the room in shades of gold, Aunt Lila brought out an old photo album. She set it on the table with a quiet reverence. Inside were pictures of her younger days. A bright-eyed girl in school uniforms, a poised young woman in elegant dresses, a confident figure who seemed to shift effortlessly between roles. "I used to struggle with who I was supposed to be," she said softly, tracing a fingertip over a photo. "People always want to place you in a box. But boxes can be opened. Sometimes we just need someone to hand us the key." Her words sank into me like rain into dry soil. I wanted to ask if she had felt what I was feeling now, the slow, undeniable pull toward something unnamed, but the words tangled in my throat. Instead, I turned the pages, studying the images of a younger Aunt Lila, who seemed to understand more than she could ever put into words. The next morning, I woke to find a small package waiting on the vanity. Inside was a soft powder blue cardigan and a delicate silver necklace with a tiny teardrop charm. A note rested on top in Aunt Lila's careful handwriting. "For when you're ready to see yourself as more than a project." I stared at the words for a long time, the meaning sinking in like a slow tide. Ready. More than a project. The idea both thrilled and frightened me. That day's tea tasted sweeter than ever, with a subtle warmth that seemed to reach every corner of my body. As I sat across from Aunt Lila, feeling the soft weight of the necklace around my neck, I realized I had stopped asking questions about the tea's ingredients or the purpose of the photographs. The details no longer mattered. What mattered was the quiet certainty growing inside me, the sense that each sip, each fitting, each gentle word was guiding me toward a truth I wasn't yet brave enough to speak. But even as comfort settled over me, a flicker of unease stirred at the edges of my thoughts. Change, no matter how gentle, carries its own kind of tension. And though I felt more like myself than ever before, a small part of me wondered what would happen if I tried to step back. Would the reflection in the mirror wait patiently for me to return to my old self? Or had that version of me already begun to fade? The question lingered like an unfinished chord as I lay awake that night, the silver charm cool against my skin, the faint taste of honeyed tea still on my lips. Somewhere deep down, I sensed that the answer was already unfolding, as inevitable as morning light. Morning sunlight spilled across the room like a soft invitation, and for the first time since arriving, I didn't hesitate when I rose from bed. There was no nervous flutter as I crossed the hallway, only a quiet anticipation that hummed through my chest. Aunt Lila greeted me with her usual calm smile, but there was a spark in her eyes that made the air feel charged, as though she had been waiting for this particular day. "Today is a milestone," she said, placing a steaming cup of tea on the table before I could even ask. "You've come so far without realizing it. Let's celebrate with something new." Her words sent a ripple of warmth and unease through me. I sat down slowly, the soft scent of the tea rising in delicate waves, richer now, with a faint sweetness that felt both soothing and strangely invigorating. I wrapped my hands around the cup and let the warmth seep into my fingers. "What's different about today?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. Aunt Lila tilted her head, her smile thoughtful. "Today isn't about costumes or photographs. It's about choice. You've been exploring sides of yourself, but now it's time to decide whether you want to keep walking this path or simply remember it as a beautiful summer experiment." The words hung between us, heavy yet gentle. My heart beat faster as I sipped the tea, the familiar calm settling over me like a soft blanket. I thought about the days of photographs, the feel of lace against my skin, the way my reflection had shifted until it no longer felt like a disguise. I tried to imagine packing my things, returning to college, slipping back into jeans and t-shirts as if nothing had happened. The thought felt strangely hollow, like trying to fit back into a room I had quietly outgrown. "I don't know if I can go back," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to decide everything now," she said gently. "Just allow yourself to feel what's true in this moment." She led me to the back room, where the clothing rack held something new. Gone were the crisp uniforms and pastel dresses. Instead, a single outfit waited: a soft cream blouse paired with tailored trousers and a long, flowing cardigan the color of dusk. It wasn't overtly feminine or masculine. It simply existed, graceful and balanced. "This is for today," Aunt Lila said. "Not a character, not a costume, just an expression of where you are right now." I changed slowly, the fabric whispering against my skin. When I emerged, Aunt Lila's expression softened with quiet pride. "You carry yourself beautifully," she said, adjusting the cardigan's drape. "It suits you because it doesn't ask you to be anyone but yourself." Standing before the mirror, I studied the reflection. It was subtle, yet undeniable. A person neither confined nor defined by old expectations. My hair caught the light with a soft glow. My skin held a natural smoothness that no camera filter could create, and my posture felt relaxed yet quietly assured. The transformation wasn't just in the clothes. It was in the way I inhabited them. "Do you see it?" Aunt Lila asked quietly. I nodded, though words felt inadequate. I saw a version of myself I hadn't known was possible, someone whose presence carried a quiet harmony, neither hiding nor shouting, simply existing in truth. The next days flowed in a gentle rhythm. We spent long afternoons walking through the garden, sipping tea on the porch, and talking about everything and nothing. Aunt Lila shared stories of her own life. How she had once struggled with expectations, how she learned that identity isn't a single decision but 1,000 quiet ones. Each story settled over me like a piece of a larger puzzle, filling gaps I hadn't known were there. But even as comfort deepened, small moments reminded me that change carries weight. When I caught my reflection in shop windows during a rare trip to town, I noticed how strangers' eyes lingered for a heartbeat longer than before, as if sensing something different but not quite naming it. When I spoke to my parents on the phone, my voice sounded softer to my own ears, though they didn't seem to notice. One evening, after another quiet dinner, Aunt Lila placed a small wooden box on the table. Inside lay a delicate set of makeup brushes and a palette of neutral shades. "No pressure," she said as I stared at the contents. "Think of it as another way to explore, nothing more." My hands trembled slightly as I lifted one of the brushes. I had never worn makeup beyond a bit of stage paint for school plays, but under Aunt Lila's patient guidance, I traced soft lines of color across my skin. Each stroke felt less like covering and more like revealing, highlighting the subtle contours of a face I was only beginning to claim. When I looked into the mirror afterward, the change was barely noticeable. A gentle glow, a slight emphasis around the eyes, but it felt profound. The reflection wasn't a stranger. It was me unhidden. "You've always been beautiful," Aunt Lila said softly, standing behind me. "This just helps you see what's already there." Her words brought an unexpected sting of tears to my eyes. I blinked them back, overwhelmed by a sudden rush of gratitude and fear. Gratitude for the quiet space she had given me to discover myself. Fear of what it would mean to carry this truth beyond the safety of her walls. That night, as I lay awake, the questions I had been avoiding finally surfaced. Who was I becoming? Was this transformation something I could share with the world? Or was it a private journey meant to stay within the gentle cocoon of Aunt Lila's home? And if I chose to step fully into this new self, what would it mean for the life I had left waiting outside these walls? The answers didn't come, but a quiet certainty settled in their place. Whatever path lay ahead, it would be my choice. Not a costume, not a performance, but a series of deliberate steps toward the person I had always been, waiting beneath the surface. As I drifted toward sleep, the faint scent of lavender and tea filled the air, wrapping me in a calm that felt both fragile and unshakable. The summer was far from over, but I sensed that the days ahead would ask more of me than simply wearing a uniform or sipping a mysterious brew. They would ask me to live the truth I had begun to taste, one gentle sip at a time. The days that followed felt like a quiet unfolding, each moment carrying a weight that was both thrilling and terrifying. Morning tea had become more than a habit. It was a grounding ritual, a soft reminder that the world outside Aunt Lila's house could wait while I discovered who I was becoming. I no longer questioned the subtle sweetness or the faint herbal undertone in each cup. Whatever it was, it made me feel present, calm, and strangely clear, as though my thoughts were aligning with a truth I'd been resisting for years. One late afternoon, after a gentle rain had left the garden glistening, Aunt Lila suggested we take the photographs outside. The air smelled of wet earth and fresh leaves as we carried the camera and a small trunk of clothes to the stone path that wound through the roses. She handed me an outfit that took my breath away, a light linen jumpsuit with a belt that cinched softly at the waist. It was effortless, neither feminine nor masculine, but quietly elegant. As I changed inside the small garden shed, I caught my reflection in the dusty mirror. The person staring back no longer startled me. The soft glow of my skin, the natural fall of my hair, the relaxed confidence in my posture, all of it felt not like a disguise but a revelation. I realized I was no longer waiting to see if the transformation was temporary. This was me emerging piece by piece. When I stepped onto the path, Aunt Lila raised the camera but paused before taking the first shot. "You don't need direction anymore," she said softly. "Just exist." The photographs that followed were unlike any we had taken before. There was no posing, no careful adjustment of angles. I walked among the roses, touched the raindrops on the leaves, and let the breeze play with my hair. The camera clicked softly in the background, capturing not a performance but a quiet truth. Later, as we reviewed the photos on the porch, Aunt Lila set down the camera and looked at me with a steady gaze. "Do you know what I see?" she asked. "What?" My voice felt small in the cool evening air. "Someone who has stopped hiding," she said. "Someone who isn't afraid to let the world see them." Her words brought a lump to my throat. For years, I had moved through life with a careful neutrality, never drawing too much attention, never revealing more than I had to. Now, sitting there in the fading light, I felt as though every quiet moment of the summer had been preparing me to step beyond those boundaries. But with that realization came an unexpected wave of fear. What would happen when I left this house? How would my parents, my friends, my classmates react if they saw me as I was now? Could I carry this truth into a world that still preferred easy categories? Aunt Lila seemed to sense my unease. "Change doesn't mean you have to announce anything to anyone," she said gently. "It means you carry your truth, even if only you know it. The world will catch up in its own time." That night, as we shared our evening tea, she placed a small notebook in front of me. "For your thoughts," she said. Write what you can't yet say out loud. Sometimes clarity comes through ink before it reaches the tongue. I opened the notebook later in the quiet of my room, the soft lamp casting a circle of light across the page. At first, the words came slowly. Hesitant observations about the tea, the photographs, the subtle changes in my reflection. But soon deeper truths began to spill onto the paper. I wrote about the unexpected joy of seeing softness in my face, the calm that settled over me when I moved in clothes once deemed off-limits, the quiet relief of no longer pretending I was untouched by these discoveries. When I finally set the pen down, I felt lighter, as though each sentence had carved a path forward. I didn't have every answer, but I knew I couldn't unsee what I had discovered. The next morning, Aunt Lila greeted me with a single question. "Would you like to choose your outfit today?" The offer startled me. Until now, she had always selected the garments, each one a carefully chosen step in a silent journey. I walked to the rack and let my fingers glide over the fabrics, feeling their textures and possibilities. My hand settled on a soft lavender blouse and a pair of tailored charcoal slacks, simple, balanced, quietly confident. As I dressed, a wave of calm washed over me. This choice was mine, free of suggestion or expectation. When I emerged, Aunt Lila's eyes shone with quiet pride. "Perfect," she said, her voice warm. "You've found your own language." Over tea, we spoke of practical things. My upcoming return to college, the friends I would see again, the life waiting beyond these walls. Yet beneath the casual conversation, I felt a quiet understanding growing between us. The summer wasn't about costumes or photographs anymore. It was about discovering the courage to exist without apology. That evening, we walked through the garden as the sky turned violet. Fireflies blinked softly in the growing dusk, their brief sparks mirroring the quiet glow I felt inside. Aunt Lila stopped beside a rosebush heavy with blossoms and touched my shoulder lightly. "Whatever you choose after this," she said, "remember that transformation isn't about becoming someone else. It's about uncovering the self you've always carried." The words settled into me like a steady heartbeat. I didn't know exactly what lay ahead, what conversations, what challenges, what quiet victories, but for the first time the uncertainty didn't frighten me. It felt like possibility. That night, I wrote again in the notebook, filling pages with thoughts of the world beyond Aunt Lila's house. I imagined returning to campus not as a different person, but as someone finally aligned with themselves. I didn't need to explain everything. I only needed to live it. As I set down the pen, I realized the fear that had shadowed me for so long had softened into something almost tender. Change was no longer a storm to endure. It was a quiet sunrise, steady and unstoppable, carrying me forward whether I was ready or not. I spent the next week trying to understand what had happened, why it all felt so perfectly timed, so inevitable. Every step, the uniform, the tea, the quiet encouragement, had been small enough to seem harmless on its own, yet together they formed a path I hadn't seen until I was already halfway down it. Aunt Clara never admitted to anything beyond helping me see myself clearly. And maybe that was the truth. Maybe the hormones in the tea had been her way of giving me a nudge I couldn't give myself. Or maybe they were just herbal infusions and the real change was already brewing inside me long before I stepped into that first skirt. I'll probably never know for sure. But the strangest part was how peaceful I felt about it. Once I accepted that the transformation wasn't a trap but a revelation, the fear that had once knotted my stomach began to dissolve. I woke each morning with a new rhythm, noticing tiny changes in my reflection. A softer jawline, a delicate glow to my skin, the way my posture seemed to naturally shift toward grace. The old me, the boy who once believed he had to armor himself against every expectation, was slowly becoming a memory. Not gone, but woven into something broader and truer. When I finally returned home for a weekend visit, my parents stared in quiet shock. My mother's eyes widened at my new haircut and the way the uniform hugged me like it belonged there. My father's silence stretched like a tightrope across the room. I stood straighter than I ever had before and waited for their questions. "You look happy," my mother finally said, her voice trembling somewhere between worry and wonder. My father cleared his throat, looked at me for a long time, and nodded. That single nod carried more acceptance than any speech could have. Back at school, the whispers never stopped, but they changed. People no longer asked if I was trying something. Instead, they asked if I was going to audition for the choir, if I could help them pick outfits, if I wanted to join a study group. I wasn't an experiment to them anymore. I was simply me. Even Lucas, who once teased me mercilessly, offered a shy smile as we crossed paths in the hallway. For the first time, I smiled back without flinching. Aunt Clara still calls every Sunday evening. Sometimes we talk about classes, sometimes about recipes, and sometimes about nothing at all. She always ends the call with the same words. Keep choosing yourself. I don't know if she realizes how deeply those words have rooted inside me, but I carry them everywhere. Through late-night walks, through exams, through moments when old doubts try to claw their way back. The tea tin now sits empty on my dresser, its label faded and unreadable. I keep it there as a reminder that transformation can come disguised as something ordinary, something as simple as a warm drink on a rainy afternoon. I still don't know if the leaves inside carried anything beyond flavor, and maybe I never will. What matters is that each sip gave me a reason to pause, to breathe, to imagine a self I hadn't dared to meet. Sometimes I catch my reflection and think about the boy who arrived at Aunt Clara's house all those weeks ago, clinging to a name and a fear he no longer owns. I want to tell him it's okay, that the journey isn't a straight line, and that sometimes the smallest invitations, a uniform folded neatly on a bed, a steaming cup of tea, can open doors you never knew existed. I stand here now, dressed in a life that finally feels like mine, and I understand what Aunt Clara meant when she said, "Clothing doesn't hide you, it reveals you." She was right. First came the uniform, then the tea, and finally the courage to step into the person I was always meant to become. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to our channel.